Welcome in to the WarChant.com report. I'm Jeff Cameron of ESPN Radio alongside Ira Schoffel and Gene Williams of WarChant.com. Of course, great to be with you. And here it is, Notre Dame time. 9-0 Notre Dame at that. NBC, 7:30 at night. Should be a good time. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll find out. But first things first, Florida State did play a game this past Saturday. Lost that game to NC State. Not a real big surprise there. But James Blackman played quarterback and played mighty well. In fact, if you look at those stats, 421 yards, 4 touchdowns, just the 1 pick. And really, even though he was sacked 5 times, probably could have been sacked 10 to 12 times without that mobility. So that was good to see. Gene, in your mind, how much better was this offense with James Blackman running it as opposed to DeAndre Francois?
Well, I like it. I mean, I think it's better. It still doesn't help the running game that much either way. I mean, that's still ultimately the biggest issue in this team. But a guy that, like you pointed out, Jeff, he's more mobile. And it's not because he can get out in the running game and do a whole lot, but I mean, avoiding that rush. And it's going to be with this offensive line. You're going to have to avoid a lot of guys coming at you. He's better at that right now, so that gives you a little of an edge too. And the thing we've known about James Blackman forever, throws a really nice deep ball. That's a big benefit to Terry, and that's one of your biggest weapons. He has been your biggest weapon on offense, so I think that's an advantage there as well. And let's face it, nothing against DeAndre Francois. I think he's made some efforts to try to be a better teammate and a better leader. But James Blackman's a natural leader. These kids love to play for him. I mean, he's the natural leader. He should be the quarterback on that team. So I think it benefits overall the offense. Is it going to change things around? Is it suddenly going to be a winning team? No. They've got a long way to go there. But I like what he gives this team. It's a little bit more, I think, all around than Francois.
At the time that we're recording this, it's interesting because DeAndre Francois had some comments. In fact, here they are right now. This is DeAndre Francois talking earlier in the week about being the number 1 quarterback on this team.
Last week, I just was focused on getting back out, focusing on my concussion. But I feel great now. We're just gonna see how practice goes. I'm still the number 1 guy. Coach Taggart continues to make that clear. James understands that, but James is always ready to go. If anything happens to me, God forbid.
It's DeAndre Francois, and he clearly made the case that he is the number 1 guy here. And I think it's very fascinating, given that the head coach, Willie Taggart, told me, told you, told the assembled media that this would be a competition throughout the week. DeAndre doesn't see it that way. I guess we have something to discuss here. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Not only does DeAndre not see it that way, but he quoted Willie Taggart as telling us that he told him.
Sure, Coach loved that.
Clearly the number 1 quarterback, and that James is going to be the backup, and James understands that. And then we went out to practice, and sure enough, DeAndre Francois was the first quarterback to go out in the passing drill. So I think he is going to be the starter. I think DeAndre also cleared up why he was out last week. There was a comment Coach Taggart made, something about rib bones connected to the head bone. It turns out it was a concussion, and so that's why he missed last week. But look, I mean, I think I don't know why Coach Taggart did not want to confirm that on Monday. I don't know if because everybody was so excited about Willie Taggart, about James Blackman, the fact he was ACC quarterback of the week, had that great performance, didn't want to come back the next day and throw the wet blanket on it, or maybe he was going to wait all week. But I think DeAndre Francois is telling the truth when he says he is going to be the starting quarterback.
A lot of factors play into this, and I understand that as a fan base, this will lead to great debate, and rightfully so. I mean, I don't think we can get around some of the controversy that this will help bring on. Fans see Blackman as a better option, I think. Judging by your boards on WarChant.com and the emails I get from my show, I think people are ready to move on. Clearly, maybe Willie Taggart is not, and there are a lot of factors that play in that. There's the red shirt angle. There's a lot of things. I know you're writing a column on WarChant.com, and if you guys haven't read it yet, go to WarChant.com to do that.
Yeah, I think the whole thing, there's a lot of, again, the question is, what are you playing for at this point of the season? I think most people think James Blackman gives this team a better chance to win, but how great of a chance does it have? I mean, certainly at Notre Dame this week, they're an 18-point underdog. James Blackman's not going to change that line very much. I mean, Florida State's probably not going to win that game. The Boston College and Florida games are a little bit different. I think you guys probably feel like James Blackman gives you a better chance to win. But there's one other factor you got to think about is what does James Blackman and his family want? Do they want him to play in these last couple of games? He's played in 4 games now, so he can still get a red shirt if he doesn't play another snap of football. If he plays one more snap, he's done. He can't get that year back. That may be a factor. I don't know for sure it is, but that could be a factor as well. But I got to think the red shirt factor is as big as anything of why DeAndre Francois would get the start this Saturday.
Let me jump in here. I know it's a slim you're going to lose to Notre Dame. We all agree on that. You got a slim shot at keeping the longest streak in the nation of bowls alive. And there's a fighter's chance you might be beating Florida. It's a long shot, but it's a fighter's chance. You're telling your team, It's not even an issue. If you're going to sit there and try to redshirt Blackman and put Francois there, you're sending the message, forget it, that streak's over.
Well,
I don't
therein
think- I
lies
don't
the controversy. They don't view it that way.
And they're not going to say that.
Of course, they can't
that
say that,
is-
but that is why there's controversy here because, Gene, I agree with you. I feel like that's the case. They stand a better chance to beat Boston College in Florida with James Blackman as their starting quarterback. But, at the same time, neither of these two quarterbacks are going to beat Notre Dame. So who you start in this game, I don't suppose matters. What it does do is call into question the decision to have him do mop-up duty in the Wake Forest game.
Yeah.
Why did you do that? That doesn't make any sense. You can question that. Clemson, we went to the Miami game. I understand DeAndre came out there. You could have had a redshirt come in and run the ball. You were in plus territory. If you were really worried about all this, you had opportunities not to play him in moments where it didn't make any difference. So I can see why fans will be upset about that moving forward. All right, there was another big decision that happened in this game, and I did like this decision, and I actually liked the follow-up on it. Gene, Walt Bell called the plays for this game. I thought he did a pretty good job all in all, but I think I'm more impressed with the decision that Willie Taggart made to cede play calling to Walt Bell. Your thoughts on what you saw and that decision?
No, absolutely. I think it's not so much the play calling. I think fans think it's a magic pill. Suddenly you change the play call, the offense is suddenly going to be dynamic. It still has the issues it has, but like to your point, I love the fact that it shows there's some flexibility. Willie Taggart doesn't suffer from hubris, kind of like the last guy did. He's not overly stubborn. We pointed out before, he has fired coaches in the past too, and I think that's the next step. It's not going to happen during the season, but I think we know a couple changes need to be probably made on that staff. Maybe he needs to change his approach, because one thing we know about this season, it did not go the way Willie Taggart expected. So if things don't go the way you expect, you got to change some things, and this is a very positive sign that this coach is willing to look in the mirror, realize some things aren't working. Maybe my way isn't the best way. Maybe I need to change some things around. So for that fact that he's not overly stubborn, he's willing to make changes, very positive sign.
Yeah, strip the ego there and allow for change to be made. What did you notice a discernible difference from Walt Bell calling plays as opposed to Willie Taggart?
Well, there's some similarities. They still can't run the football. Differences-wise, it's hard to know because they also had the quarterback change. So it's kind of hard to decide what was a James Blackman. What did they do to tailor the game plan to James Blackman, who does throw that great deep ball, versus what DeAndre Francois does. So I think we would have to see another game or two with Walt Bell calling the plays to know for sure. I did like the fact that, to me, my favorite play call of that game was when they hit the 35-yard pass to James Blackman, however many yards it was. Then they went straight back they got the same look again, went straight back to it again, and said, if you can't stop it, let's see if you can stop it this time. And they couldn't, and Blackman got the touchdown. I thought that was good. We haven't really seen that from Willie Taggart, the play caller. I think Walt Bell might be a little bit more aggressive. I think there were more shots down the field. But again, we don't know because that might have been a Blackman factor. We'll have to see if DeAndre starts this week, if we see any changes back to the way it was before, or if they keep going vertically.
Certainly the inability to run the football is something that will carry over across play callers, quarterbacks, really doesn't matter. That's going to continue this weekend against Notre Dame. Speaking of which, we get to preview Notre Dame next on the WarChant.com report.
Hey, this is John in Greenville, South Carolina.
This is Eric from New Haven, Connecticut. My name's Jared. I'm from Mobile, Alabama.
Justin from Oklahoma.
This is Ryan from Marshall, Georgia.
This is Terrell calling from Texas.
This is Josh from St. Louis, Missouri.
This is Roderick from North Carolina.
Wake up, Corey. Wake up, Aslan. It's Gibby. Still coming to you guys from East Village in Manhattan, New York City.
This is Kevin. I'm up here in Radford, Virginia.
It's Chris from beautiful sunny Phoenix.
Sam Wright, all the way from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Hey, this is Josh from South Dakota.
Just wanted to call and say, love the show.
First of all, I want to start off by saying I love you guys' show.
I really appreciate the show.
Great show, guys. Really enjoy it.
I love the podcast.
Big fan of the show.
Keep up the good work, guys.
Keep up the good work. Love the show.
Wake up!
Wake up!
Wake up! Wake up! Wake up, Warchant!
Welcome back to the WarChant.com report as we take a look at Notre Dame. And, it doesn't matter if you're looking at traditional numbers with Notre Dame. It doesn't matter if you're looking at the S&P and advanced numbers and all the advanced metrics we use these days. Notre Dame's 9-0. They're number 3 in the country. They're hosting this game at night. They're certainly excited to be in the talk of the college football playoff. And ever since they made the change from Winbush to Ian Book, the numbers on offense across the board have improved. Here's Willie Taggart talking about their quarterback.
He's really accurate throwing the football. I mean, he throws seeds. I think he is very similar to the kid at Clemson when it comes to accuracy. The kid at Clemson gets it out really fast and really strong arm, but I think he's he understands the offense. He's a winner. He's a gamer. You know, he get in the game. You can tell when he plays, he's having fun, and guys feed off of him. But he put the ball where his receivers could catch it and can run after the catch. You know, so we got to find ways to get pressure on him and not let him be comfortable throwing the football.
All right, Ira, that's Willie Taggart talking about Ian Book. And one thing I think we both see, certainly, when you look at Notre Dame's offense with Winbush on the bench and Book in there, is they're much more efficient, and he gets the ball out of his hands.
Yeah, I mean, he's totally changed their entire offense. Really, and it's funny, you know, he's made some early appearances, and Coach Kelly was not real eager to make the change, was kind of reluctant to make the change for whatever reason. But, man, they've been a completely different team with Ian Book running a quarterback. What's funny about him is he was like a 3-star prospect out of high school. He was not a superstar recruit, but he's perfect fit for their offense. He's very adept at running tempo, very accurate passer. He's completing like 75% of his passes, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Just he's kind of a perfect fit for what they're trying to do offensively. And the problem for Florida State, like it was against NC State, he gets the ball out of his hands quickly, like Ryan Finley, and you come out of a game where you don't feel like you affected the quarterback. In this secondary, if you don't affect the quarterback, it's a tough day.
It was last week. I think it will be again this week. And now Florida State has another problem, is that the run defense was terrible last week, and that's another story altogether. But that certainly aids the quarterback's ability to be comfortable in the pocket. Defensively, Gene, you look at Notre Dame, they're a top 10 defense, advanced metrics. Again, this is a real good football team. I think right now we're all caught up in, obviously, the best team in the country is Alabama, and we think maybe the next best is Clemson. But Notre Dame deserves to be in the discussion. They've played good football, efficient football, and it's because they're good on both sides of the ball. Assuming Florida State's unable to run the football here, do you see them having success through the air? And again, now we have a quarterback situation where maybe James isn't in there.
Yeah, you're right. They're very equally good against the run and pass. The one thing that was interesting when I looked at looking at their scores, every game defensively they gave up between 16 and 27 points. Yeah. It's just crazy consistent how good they are there. You know, if you're really grasping for straws, the one thing that I would say is they haven't played at teams that chuck the ball around a lot. So maybe there's something there. Although, let's face it, Julian Love is a big-time cornerback. He's going to be a draft pick pretty high next spring. And they've got a defensive tackle. And I had to look at this number twice. Jerry Tillery has got 7 sacks. He's a 308-pound defensive tackle with 7 sacks.
Number 99. You'll see
him a lot. Watch out.
Unfortunately,
Francois Blackman's going to see him a lot, too, coming up the middle, especially if you have to have Arthur Williams has to start again up there.
Goodness gracious.
That's a little bit scary, too. So it's a very good team. I will say one thing. Virginia Tech did throw for over 300 yards against them, but at the same time, they threw it 52 times.
Yeah.
So maybe you can have a little bit of success throwing the football, but, you know, we'll talk about weather later. The forecast right now is going to be cold and windy, probably not conducive to chucking that ball around a lot. So there's not really a whole lot to be positive about here when it comes to Florida State's offense.
You know what's difficult, guys? I really think this is true when we sit here and we do these reports, and they're fun to do, and we love talking about our team, but it's very rare. I can't remember a time, maybe in the lost decade, where what we know about this team, and it's not changing. There's not a lot that can be gleaned. So, for example, if Notre Dame thumps Florida State this weekend, what do we learn? what do we know that's any different than what we knew today as we're recording this, or last week or the week before? And I just find it difficult to talk about it because, you know, again, the definition of insanity, you know, all that stuff, that's what we're doing here. That offensive line is not getting better between now and the game on Saturday night. They're not going to beat Notre Dame. And I don't know what we're going to learn.
Well, I think the only thing from a coaching standpoint is you'd want to see, is there some pride? Is there some fight? Because this is a situation where everything really is stacked up against them. They don't match up well with Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a much better team. It's on the road. The conditions are going to be brutal. I mean, it may be 25 degrees at game time. These guys don't look comfortable at 60 degrees. So I don't know how they're going to be at 25 degrees. You know, and again, in the Clemson game, they rose to the occasion in the first quarter, but the first sense of adversity, they fell apart. To me, that's all it is. Will these guys compete? And that's where we are. And I know people don't want to hear that because it's such a low bar, but that's where the bar is. Are they going to compete in a game where everything is lined up for them to fail? And I think that's one thing I would be looking for if I was a coaching staff.
What are you looking for, Gene? What are you trying to take from this game?
The last time they played up north against a team that was pretty solid was Boston College, who got a little cold, and they wanted nothing to do with that. So as Ira said, a little bit of fight. How about just let's cut down on penalties? Let's look a little bit more disciplined. Let's not lead the country and getting 16, 15 penalties every game. Maybe cut that down to 8 or 9. I think that'd be a positive thing. But there's, like you said, if they lose by, I think the line's 18. We'll talk about that later. But if they lose by 18 to 25, 26 points, If they lose by 40 or more, then again, we know, okay, this team has completely packed it in.
And with that, we'll tell you the keys to victory coming up next on the WarChant.com report.
It's football season in Tallahassee, and the only place to go for FSU apparel and merchandise is Garnet and Gold. Locally owned and operated by Seminoles for Seminoles for nearly 40 years. Garnet and Gold has the best selection of FSU merchandise in town, but what we really sell is tradition and passion to serve you, the true Seminole fans, at all 3 of our locations, West Pensacola Street, Killarn, and our flagship store across from Regal Cinema. Online at garnetandgold.com. Shop local and go Noles.
Welcome back to the WarChant.com report. I got it right, guys. You didn't see the other takes, those 2 that were blown. As always, you can go to WarChant.com and check the game day page and find out where in your area you can get together with your fellow Noles, watch the game, maybe start imbibing a little early for this one, given the 7 o'clock kick and the nature of the opponent. And before we get to all of that with the keys to the game, let's first talk a problem that is, again, the bane of this team's existence. Penalties. And penalties, and some more penalties, and 16 of them in this last game. It is absolutely brutal. Gene, where do we start? That's 15-16, right? Back-to-back games? Is that right?
I thought it was 16-16.
Is it 16-16? Did I?
16-15. It's hard to keep up.
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot.
They're averaging more than 30.
More than 30.
Yeah, more than 15 a game the last couple. That's pretty safe to say. No, it's absolutely brutal. And the thing that's distressing about this is you understand this early on. It's a new system, a lot of stuff, a lot of changes. You're 9 games into the season. You can't be committing that many penalties. This goes to coaching more than anything else at this point. At that point, something's got to be kicking in. Something's not working. And here's a stat. I don't know if you want to put this on the little scroll at the bottom there, Aslan, but at last check, Florida has 708 rushing yards on the season. They have 700 penalty yards. So they could end up having more penalty yards than rushing yards. I don't know if that's ever been done in college football before. That is pretty amazing.
That'll hurt your feelings. I would also note that for the first time, maybe not the first time for him showcasing some frustration, but the first time specific to the questions about penalties, we saw Willie Taggart in the press conference clearly agitated. He couldn't sit still. He stared daggers at your cohort, Corey Clark. He's angry.
Yeah, and that was a play where they avoided the penalty by calling timeout.
By having 10 men on the field after a punt.
Wasted timeout, before a punt. I mean, there are 2 different categories. I think the ones that are frustrating him the most are the ones pre-snap where they can't get lined up correctly. Holding calls on the offensive line, look, they're not very good.
They got to do what they got to do.
They're going to have to hold sometimes. Yeah. It may get called. So I don't think that's as big of a concern. And I'll give them a benefit of the doubt on some of those pass interference.
Terrible.
You got some hand play going on there, and for whatever reason, Stanford Samuels and Asante Samuel are trying to swat the hands away from NC State's receivers, and that becomes a personal foul on them. I didn't like those calls, but then again, they have a reputation for being an undisciplined team, and I think referees see them. Referees are human, and I think people are seeing them as an undisciplined team, and they're not going to get the benefit of the doubt. And that's not going to change going forward. The other thing, really the big one, and we wrote about this week on the site, is on these kickoff returns. They are absolutely killing themselves with these penalty on kickoff returns.
You don't like starting at the 5, the 7, the 3
they've had
for the first possession?
Their last 10 kickoff returns where they've actually tried to return it, out of the last 10, 5 of them have been pushed back by penalties. One of them, they had 2 penalties on the same play.
Same guy, too.
So they end up with 3. They end up at the 3-yard line on that play. So, again, that stuff has to get cleaned up to give themselves a chance. They're not a good enough football team to overcome poor officiating, which we know is going to happen in the ACC. Whether it's biased or not, it's poor officiating, and their own incompetence in certain areas to then have mistakes. Back in the 90s, Florida State was very heavily penalized, but they were so good it didn't matter. This team has to play cleaner.
Well, the margin for error is virtually nil, and they're killing themselves with these situations. And I think Ira alluding to the special teams penalties, this is something that, again, you talked about with coaching. It does have to lay at the feet of Willie Taggart and his coaching staff. And that might be an area, personal opinion, where we see some change in the offseason. The special teams has been an unmitigated disaster. Now, 3 keys to victory, and trying to find a means to win this game really reside within things that are out of your control, such as Notre Dame helping you out with turnovers, perhaps. And then I would say, you got to almost hope for a blizzard
I'm
serious.
My number one key is hope for like a snowstorm.
Yeah, I mean, just hope for a blizzard where it offsets any advantage or disadvantage that anybody has. Just you're playing in a blizzard. And I'm going to be there in the stands, and I hope it happens. I would love for it. I just want to stand in a blizzard and go, all right, I'm in a blizzard, and it's 0-0 in the fourth. We're in it.
So biggest key to game is hope for inclement weather. Okay.
Yeah, no, we can't determine the outcome of the game through our play physically and strategically. It has to be that they make mistakes and or we get a blizzard.
I think we need to change the keys to being somewhat competitive. Can we change that instead of change a victory? I would say number one, dress warmly. That's going to be important. Get those undergarments, be nice and warm. The defense is going to have to be somewhat competitive in this game. You can't the last two games just giving up, letting teams do that. If you're going to have any chance to keep it close, you got to keep them in the 20s or 30s. Them going up and down the field is not going to help. And then self-inflicted wounds. If you commit 15, 16, 17 penalties, whatever it's going to be, again, you are going to lose by 40, 50 points, and it's going to get really ugly.
Yeah, I always say this when you're trying to be the team that causes an upset to happen. You got to put game pressure on the team that's favored to win. Put a little pressure on the team that has a chance to go to the college football playoff and have them start to think about that. But that means, Gene, you're right, you're in the game in the second half. It also likely means you scored first to try to take the fans out of it. You were the benefactor of turnovers, those kinds of cliche things, but they play a role.
Yeah, I think defensively they have to play so much better across the board than they did this past week. I mean, that was probably the worst defensive effort maybe of the season against NC State, all things considered.
I thought so.
And so that has to rebound a lot. You need to see a much better play from the defensive line, really the entire defense, every segment of the defense. But my keys to victory for the fans is to enjoy your time at Notre Dame.
Imbibe heavily.
It's a beautiful campus. Walk around the quad. They've got a nice museum there. You can see artifacts. It's very enlightening. A lot of good history there to observe.
Yeah, great history.
Spend some time in Chicago. Get the deep dish pizza. Make a weekend of it. Enjoy yourself because
can't be outcome oriented, Ira.
Exactly.
This is about the process. I think we get back to the process here. We live in the moment. We don't worry about what we'd like to see happen, but rather what is. Just accept it, right?
I like it.
It's a little stoicism, right? All right, here we go. Weekly picks. Clemson minus 18 against Boston College. That actually strikes me as a good football game. I like this BC team an awful lot. Clemson's better, and Clemson will win the game. But do you guys feel like Clemson should be given 18?
I'm going to take Clemson because I think Boston College is looking ahead to the Knowles.
I like it. A little look-ahead spot for
make
BC.
Make sure they get that big win against the Knowles, concede this game against Clemson. I'm taking Clemson the points. Clemson's just rolling right now.
They are the last two games. I mean, they obviously Florida State was one of them, but this is a much more disciplined team, a better coach team. Alumni Stadium, a cold November night. This is Clemson's going to win, but I think they might keep it close enough. So I'm going to give me those points.
I like it. I'm taking the Fighting Adagios with the 18.
No one's
with
surprised
18.
by that.
No, with the 18. But obviously Clemson wins. Miami's at Georgia Tech. Give me Georgia Tech. I know that Miami has had in the past success against Georgia Tech's option attack. I think Miami's packing it in. Look like a team that's quit again. So even when they beat Florida State, they quit. So it's Georgia Tech -4.
I'm with you. I think the Canes and Mark Richter.
Going with Paul Johnson.
Yeah. He loves Paul.
Takes something to go
Paul,
on there.
Yeah.
Well, this is, usually did Florida State win that game against Miami?
No.
This
Miami's
is usually
what
they do.
Victory.
I don't know. Maybe they felt they should have lost because the officials screwed Florida State. So they said, we're going to pack it in anyway. So, I'm all about the Paul Johnson. They're going to probably about 500 rushing yards on Miami in this one.
I think the other factor is that Miami's, both their quarterbacks just suck.
That's a
big factor there, yeah. All right, Oregon's at Utah. Utah is given 3. That's a unique game, an interesting game. Weird things happening with both clubs right about now. I don't know which way to go. In my personal life, I'm not betting this, but I'll take Utah -3.
I'm going to go the other. -3 is Oregon's. You're right.
Yeah, Utah's favorite at home, buddy.
I'm going to take the points in Oregon. I think they found a little something last week. They've been kind of
faltering
a little bit. I think they found something.
Don't know enough about Utah, but whatever, Utah, they're at home.
All right, they're going to run the ball. Auburn's at Georgia. Auburn with the big Sterling comeback late in the game against Texas A&M over the weekend, down by 2 scores with 5.5 minutes to play. Somehow Texas A&M dropped this football game, and Auburn, buoyed by that victory, goes to Georgia and gets 14.5 points, and the Bulldogs beat them by 35.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I hate seeing that hook. I got to take Auburn, and just that hook scares me.
I'm taking Auburn too. I'm not that impressed by the big win over the Gators last week for Georgia. I'm still not sure about them.
They beat Kentucky last week.
I thought it was Florida.
No,
Oh,
2 weeks ago.
I'm still
Florida
not
lost to
impressed.
Mizzou over the
Still not
weekend.
impressed.
You're confusing Florida losses.
I'm not impressed with
Yes,
Mizzou either.
yeah.
Anybody to beat Florida, I'm not all
Yeah.
that impressed.
Yeah.
I'm taking Auburn in the points.
All right, well, give me Georgia. South Carolina's at Florida. This is the next team that can beat Florida. Florida's given 6.5. South Carolina coming off an exciting victory over Ole Miss, in which both teams scored over 40 points. That's crazy for the SEC. Florida given 6.5. I don't know that Florida's team is good enough to be giving anybody points. I'll take South Carolina plus 6.5.
Yeah, and you got to see how they respond to Dan Mullen. Kind of called them
called
out
him
after
out,
that
called him
game.
soft.
Yeah, I don't know if he's been there long enough to do that. We'll see. He's going to go. I'm going to go ahead and take South Carolina.
You know, something about the state of Florida where the big three are.
Oh,
They got some issues. Nobody's liking
Is-
their
is-
coaches. Nobody's liking their
are
results.
none of them ranked? Is Florida not ranked anymore? Are they,
No,
did they?
Did
so
you
all
guys see
three?
that stat that Miami, Florida State, and Florida all lost in consecutive weekends for the first time ever?
Really?
Ever.
Wow.
That's an amazing stat.
They're bad.
Misery loves company.
Big four now, or there's the big one, I guess, is UCF.
Right?
one
But
and a half.
gave up 700 yards to Tulane. I'm not Tulane Temple. We'll slow our roll on how great UCF is, but okay.
I'll take Florida in the big bounce back here. The,
Big
the
bounce
humiliation at home
Big-
against Missouri, man,
big
they're going to
bounce
come
back.
out fighting.
I'll take South Carolina the points. And speaking of a team not playing well and maybe on the verge of giving up on a former Florida coach, it's about time to fake another medical condition. We're going to go Ohio State minus 3.5 at Michigan State.
There's two things I found about coaches that's interesting. It's Paul Johnson when it looks like he's about to be fired. Suddenly they start
They're gonna
winning
play well,
games
yeah,
and save
yeah.
his contract. He'll sign another one this year for several years, then he'll tank it the next couple of years. And every time you want to count Urban Meyer out, he slimes his way back in. He has to win this to stay alive in the college football playoff. He's going to go for that number 4 seed. He always finds a way to do it. So I think they win this game.
The oddity here is that they're screaming for you to take Michigan State because you watched Ohio State last week against Nebraska, and they very well could have lost that game. They're not playing for their head coach, and yet Michigan State's offense is so bad.
That's the problem.
I got to take Ohio
That's
State.
the problem. I want to take Michigan State.
I do. I desperately do.
But man, they are so awful.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take Ohio State. So all of us with the Urban Meyer selection, I know that warms your heart. Finally, the big game, Florida State at Notre Dame in prime time, the nation watching on the edge of their seats, and it's Notre Dame giving 18 points. Is it enough? Give me your final score.
No, it's not enough. I just don't see any way they keep it within 18. I have a real hard. I would never bet on something like this. I know you may dabble a little bit here and there,
Sure,
but what adds up about this? There's nothing that you could say. I mean, they can't run the football. They've been horrible defensively the last couple. They're playing a complete, well-rounded team. It's very good at home in prime time. It just doesn't add up. Notre Dame's probably going to win by almost, I would say 30 if I had to put a line
So
on
you're
this.
giving the points.
Yep.
Are you giving the points? Yeah. I'm giving the points. Now we need final scores. Yours.
I'll be generous, 38-17.
You are generous. I'll take Notre Dame 34, Florida State 7.
I was thinking 35-10 Notre Dame, and I
Very
feel
similar.
like there's a real chance it could be worse than that. But we're going to go with 35-10 right now.
Inclement weather, and they'll just try to run the clock and get out of Dodge, right? Good job, Aslan. For Ira and Gene, I'm Jeff. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Enjoy it, and we'll talk to you next week on the WarChant.com report.